Welcome back to Observability Explained, Episode 5, and arguably the keystone of the whole series. Today we're tackling a deceptively simple question every engineering team eventually has to answer. How good is good enough? We'll look at how SRE teams turn that question into a concrete reliability target and how the room left over, the error budget, becomes the permission slip to keep shipping fast without quietly burning down user trust. So here's the tension at the heart of every reliability conversation. Product is pushing to ship, ops is trying to keep things from breaking, and 100% uptime? Well, that's a fantasy and an expensive one. The trouble is, without a shared number, reliable enough stays vague. Every release feels like a fight, and every outage turns into a panic. The fix is almost embarrassingly simple. Pick a precise reliability target up front and treat the gap below 100% as a budget you're allowed to spend. That, in a sentence, is SLOs and error budgets. So let's pin that down properly. An SLO is a target for how reliable a service should be. Say 99.9% of requests succeed, and the error budget is the exact amount of unreliability that target still allows you to spend. One is the promise, the other is the room you have to break it. And the way you know where you stand is through SLIs, the actual metrics measuring real user experience. And since those three letters keep getting tangled up, here's the clean diff. The SLI is the indicator, the raw measurement, like 99.95% of requests actually succeeded last week. The SLO is the objective you set internally, say 9.9%. And the SLA is the agreement, the contract you sign with customers, usually with money attached if you drop below, say 99.5%. Measure, target, promise, in that order, and almost always with shrinking numbers as the stakes go up. Now here's where it gets practical. Once you've set that objective, the error budget is just whatever's left over, 100% minus your SLO. So a 99.9% target gives you about 43 minutes of downtime a month to spend however you want. Risky deploys, migrations, chaos experiments. Push to 99.99% and you're down to 4 minutes. And chasing a perfect 100 is just impossible. Every extra 9 costs roughly 10 times more. And the budget is what makes that trade-off something you can actually argue about with numbers instead of vibes. And calling it a budget, that's the genius part. It reframes the whole ship versus stability argument as simple accounting. Reliability stops being this vague as high as possible goal and becomes a number with real room underneath it to spend. Budget left? Ship boldly, take the risk, run the experiment. You've earned it. Burn through it? Freeze the risky launches and focus on getting healthy again. No more debates between product and ops, just what the budget says. But before you can budget anything, you need to actually measure the right thing. And that's where SLIs come in. The trick is to measure what users feel, not what your dashboards happen to expose. CPU sitting at 70%? Nobody cares. Did the page load? And did it load fast? That's the question. In practice, most good SLIs fall into 3 buckets. Availability, did the request succeed? Latency, was it fast enough? And correctness or freshness, was the answer actually right and up to date? So once you've picked your indicator, an SLO is just that number written down with a target attached. Here's what it actually looks like for a checkout service. Successful requests over total requests with an objective of 99.9% over a rolling 30-day window. Do the math on that 0.1%, and you get about 43 minutes of allowed failure per month. That's your error budget. And notice the last line, we don't wait until it's gone. We alert when 75% of it has burned, so there's still time to react. And that alerting threshold leads us straight to burn rate, the speed at which you're spending the budget, not just whether it's gone. Think of it like a fuel gauge. If you drain a month's worth of failures in an hour, that's a fast burn, and someone needs a page right now. If it'd take a full day, a ticket or Slack message is fine. And if the needle's barely moving, just keep an eye on it. Same budget, very different urgency. Now, Knowing the burn rate is one thing, but the real leverage is deciding ahead of time what you'll actually do when the budget runs dry. That's the error budget policy, a written agreement signed off by product and ops together before anyone's under pressure. When the budget's healthy, you ship at normal cadence, experiment, take measured risks. When it's exhausted, features freeze, and the team pivots to reliability, work until things recover. The decision's already made, no debates at 2 a.m. With that policy in place, it's worth pausing on why this whole framework actually sticks, because it gives every team something they genuinely want. Engineers get a clear bar and the freedom to ship while they're meeting it. Ops and SRE get an objective trigger to slow down, instead of relying on gut feel or playing the bad cop. Product gets confidence to push features when the budget allows, and leadership finally has one honest number for the reliability versus speed conversation. One agreed number ends the endless debate about whether things are reliable enough. Once people buy into that single number, a few myths still tend to creep back in. The first is chasing 100% reliability, which is impossible and ruinously expensive. The right target is one that keeps users happy and stops there. The second is conflating SLA and SLO. Your SLO is the internal goal. The SLA is the contract with penalties, and the SLO should always be the stricter of the two. And the third, leafed over budget, isn't waste, it's permission to move faster. If you're never spending it, your target is simply set too low. So let's distill all that into a working checklist. Anchor your SLIs in what users actually experience, latency they feel, errors they see, not CPU graphs only you care about. To pick a deliberate target instead of vaguely aiming high, and alert on burn rate so you hear about trouble while there's still time to react, not after the budget's gone. And critically, agree the policy before you need it, because a rule no one will enforce under pressure isn't really a policy, it's a wish. With the principles in hand, you'll want to know what actually implements them. Prometheus is where most teams start, recording rules for your SLIs and burn rate alerts. Grafana ships SLO dashboards out of the box, and Sloth generates the alert rules for you from a simple spec. If you want SLOs as code, OpenSLO gives you a vendor-neutral format, while NoBL9 and Datadog offer fuller platforms if you'd rather buy than build. Pick the one that matches where your stack already lives. Before we move on, let's pull the threads together. An SLI is what you measure, an SLO is the target you commit to, and an SLA is the contract with consequences attached. The gap between perfect and your SLO is your error budget, the failure you're allowed to spend. That's what turns the ship versus stability argument into simple math. Just remember, anchor your SLIs in what users actually feel, alert on burn rate, and agree the policy before you need it. Step back for a moment, because with SLOs in hand, the whole series clicks into place. Episodes 1 through 3 gave you the raw signals, logs, metrics, and traces. Episode 4 made them visible and actionable through dashboards and alerts. And SLOs today are how you decide what reliable enough actually means. Put those layers together and you don't just observe a system, you can operate it. So how do you actually get started without boiling the ocean? Pick one critical user journey. Checkout is the classic example, and define an SLI that mirrors what users actually feel, like success rate or latency. Set a target that's honest, 99.9% rather than the fantasy of 100%. Then wire up burn rate alerts and agree as a team what happens when the budget runs out. One good SLO on one journey beats a wall of vanity metrics every time. If you want to go further, the full observability. Explain Track walks through logs, metrics, and traces. Prometheus, distributed tracing, and dashboards, with SLOs and error budgets tying it all together. And if you're ready to step into the SRE mindset properly, the Become an SRE course pairs reliability targets with incident response and hardening, so you can run real systems at scale. Everything lives at Dargslan.com, courses. Before we wrap up, I want to turn this back to you for a second. Does your team actually have a real SLO, a written number everyone signed off on, or is reliable enough? More of a vibe you argue about in the post-mortem after each outage. Be honest with yourself. Drop your answer in the comments because the gap between those two worlds is usually where all the late-night pages live. And that wraps the series. Over these 5 episodes, we've gone from raw signals, logs, metrics, and traces, through dashboards and alerts, all the way to SLOs and error budgets as the contract that keeps velocity and reliability honest with each other. If it helped, hit subscribe so you catch what's next, and you'll find more over at dargslan.com. Thanks for watching.